Morning, guys. This is the video that I promised I'd make last night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step out to the higher time frames as per usual, okay? And I'm just going to explain what I'm seeing as to why I can justify where I think we are on the smaller time frames, okay? So to give you an idea, if you haven't followed me or you haven't followed Paul, Paul's been trading 30 odd years. I've been trading 20 something years now. And I guess beyond being a professional investor and trader, I've actually managed a venture capital fund as well that focused on cybersecurity, but in and around the payment and financial sectors. Okay, so we've made investments in blockchain-based companies, been in this space for an awful long time. Okay, now what I've mentioned right from the start is that in 2017, I was seeing, I suppose, another side of what people now look back at in terms of the charts itself, right? Now, at the time, I was seeing from the venture side of the business, I was actually seeing very little trading volume going on. This was more tech guys getting involved, right? Any VC finance from our firm or other firms would actually being put into blockchain ventures on a simple kind of premise that Bitcoin is up or down, okay? And you could clearly see that the VCs in the space without the technology backgrounds, they were basically using Bitcoin as an indicator for other blockchain projects, right? So at this point, you would have had a few institutional players buying and holding Bitcoin, but it wasn't really the volume that you would expect, then. So for me, when I take into account the Elliott wave moves, I look to ignore what I saw prior to 2017. Okay, so on a bigger time frame, I was seeing 0 to the 1 back down to the 2, right, and up for a 3. Okay, so I'm going to leave the 3 out a second. Now, when we look at the 2 to the 3 move, right, question mark on this and a question mark on this, right? Now, there's a few reasons I don't like this, right, and I'll explain those in a second. And there's a few reasons that I actually really like this, okay? So first things first, if we assume we take my count and I look at this being the 3, okay? We'd have to look from the 2 to the 3 at the internal count, which means we'd have another 0 to 1, 1 to 2, right? Now, you could argue this being the 3, the 4, the 5, okay? However, I like this one a little bit more, again, based on the fib extensions, that this being the 3, this being the 4, and this being a truncated 5. Okay, so that's the first reason I like the current all-time high as the monthly 3 up here. So let me just get rid of these two. Okay, so I'm not saying that this one on the left can't be. I'm just saying personally, I'm not a fan of that in comparison to this one. Okay, so I'm seeing the monthly 3. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, from there, the next thing that I've shown inside our Discord, okay, is a little technique that I've used and just something to show this as a whole. Okay, so I'll just get rid of the stochastic for now. Now, when we're looking at the Elliott moves altogether, right, I'd have to take into account, given what I've just said about the first, 2017 and prior to 2017 moves, that I'd have to take into account on a monthly time frame. The bigger count for me was this being the one of the monthly, and therefore we're now looking for the internal weekly move from the low. Okay, now coming from here, you'd want the first move up being the 1. You then see it pull back 2, which is this move here. Okay, so there's your 1 and there's your 2. Okay, now in Elliott terms, 3 is often the most impulsive, and there's a few reasons behind. I'm not going to go into that in this particular video, but clear as day, we can see the volume has increased. So if I just draw a line to make this more obvious, the volume that is increased there to there, okay, would justify a move up in volume and a move up in momentum on the price action, right? So for me, there's my 3. Okay, now bear in mind, I was looking at the monthly time frame big picture, and I'm now assessing the weekly internal. Okay, so the weekly internal will give me 1, 2, 3, and this is another reason that I like this being then the move down 4 and the move up 5, which would create the monthly 3 at this level. Okay, so that really for me is enough justifying as to where I think we are and why. Okay, now inside this move, we'd be looking to see, like I said, a truncated move up, right? So we had the move down, which would finish technically here, right? So that for me then gives me my 4. And the move up, you'd see the 1 inside, the 2, the 3, right? And obviously being truncated, we completely collapsed. We had probably very comparable volume sitting there, as a whole, and that wasn't that much bigger than what we saw down here. So again, for me, just justifying where we are and why I think we are where we are, right? That's the preferred option right now. Is this for me showed a truncated move up. We didn't get a big 3 like we would have liked to have saw, although not quite as big as this. It would have been nice to have seen something like this at this kind of level, right? Now, we could argue that obviously the price down here was lower, which means it's higher, of course. However, when you start looking at the prices that we were peaking at around here, we've come back to the same kind of level, right? And I'm just going to draw this on to show. We've come back to the same kind of levels, right? And therefore, you'd expect these volumes to at least come up to give us momentum past what should have been the previous all-time high, right? We didn't get that, right? So we could clearly see, going back, like I said, almost a year, or more than a year now, in terms of these moves, we can see what we've done, what we haven't done, and what we're currently doing based on the much bigger time frame. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of this, and what I'll do is I'll get rid of these couple of things as well. So now we know where we are on the bigger time frame, right? Or we think we know where we are on the bigger time frame. What we now need to look at is what happens kind of post a move monthly 3. Okay, now as you can see, we've got right now the Weiss wave, the zigzag is actually down here as one solid move, right? Which justifies to me something else. There's a move still forming that hasn't quite been completed yet, right? And the reason I say that is 70% plus of the time, when you're looking at these Elliott patterns, after a large motive wave, the zigzag is the most common 70% plus of the time. Now, it's not to say that we don't get it, right? Because people have asked me about, this being a potential flat and we could be seeing an A, followed by the B, and we get an extension C, and that could be done. That could give us the 4 move, and off we go. Of course, I'm not saying that isn't an option. I'm saying for the reasons I've just outlined overall, I don't like this one as the end of being the monthly 3, right? And there's a couple of other things on top of that. Like I said, the fib extensions, we basically tagged it just above here, but failed on this one. And that was another reason that I didn't like it, right? Now, what you have to keep in mind is I've been working on a weekly chart with a view of the monthly 3 being in, right? Now, with what I've just said about the zigzag, we could have the expanded flat, obviously, right? Which would still give us the 5 final leg in an expanded flat type move. However, I'm still basing this on the premise that we've gone an A, a B, a C. We're currently going back for the D and a final leg down to grab the liquidity down around this level, okay? Now, as I've said in the last couple of streams, we don't really have to go deep. All we need to do is come down and be drawn out in terms of the time frame, okay? Because ultimately, this is going to annoy a lot of retail traders. You see these Moon Carls and MMC, these guys are buying every single top, right? It's actually sad to watch, but, I guess overall, without going again into too much depth on that, all they're doing is making money off other people's leverage positions and basically getting kickbacks from the brokers, okay? So the thing is, knowing that these guys are top indicators, they've just called another top right at the top of this move, right? And I've posted this on Twitter. It's almost comical if it wasn't so sad, right? And I think because of the sheer number of followers, you can see almost the reason why. I don't think they really think that this was going up from there. I think ultimately it's just, leveraging somebody else's money and paying themselves through the social media platforms. So when I take all of this into account, are we ready to go to the moon yet? Definitely not, right? Now, this could be prolonged for another year. And again, I've used this, from the monthly and the weekly, the differences times four. Okay, so if you're looking at the difference between a monthly move and a weekly move, we could easily be 4 times longer, right? And I'm not saying it has to be, and it's not going to be as simple as saying, oh, well, it's 4x this, and there you go, there's your time frame. But you have to realize and you have to think about this logically. It could be, right? And it wouldn't be any surprise if it was, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind. So another question that I get quite a lot, and I've seen this especially in our own visitors channel, is that, well, the move has now crossed over the 0 to 1 leg. If we assume that this being this leg here, that's only true for for motive waves rather than corrective waves. Okay, so in corrective waves, there's less rules in terms of the formalities of the move itself. There's more structure around things like the Fibonacci extensions, right? And actually the pullbacks and so on. But in terms of the crossovers into what we would regard as the 0-1 move, now if you don't know what I'm talking about with this, in a motive wave, when you have a 0, a 1, a pullback 2, a 3, what we're saying is that 4 cannot come lower than this price one, right? If we get this kind of move, that would actually invalidate the move like this, right? So if the price comes down as far as this, that's acceptable, okay? Now, if the price goes below this, you invalidate the count on the motive side, okay? Now, on a corrective move, that isn't the case. And the reason that you can justify this is that what you tend to see with the corrective moves are moves that look a little bit more like this, right? And you'll see these W's, you'll see these M's, and in essence, they are accumulation and distribution patterns, right? Sometimes you get a move down, it'll do something like this, then it'll fall down, then you'll create a spring, and then you'll go. Then you'll come back, and then you'll go all together, okay? And all you're seeing is a much bigger Wyckoff schematic sitting inside the move, okay? So hopefully that, answers a few questions, on this, and I suppose kind of get rid of some of the doubts, and even some of the fear, I hope. So back to where we are now on this time frame, right? The way that I'm counting this right now for still my A is that I'm seeing a straight line down 1, pull back 2, right? And I always go 2 to the left, 2 to the right, coming down for the 3. In essence, at the moment, this one is actually slightly higher. Okay, so we've actually failed right now to make a new higher high. Okay, now I wouldn't be surprised to see another fake out and drop down, right? But I don't see this going, to the moon just yet. Okay, so assuming that we've had this move in now and we go straight back down, I think again it's part of this double bottom that I've mentioned. There's liquidity sitting in and around this zone, right? So we don't have to go deep. We just need to come down and collect, new positions, new strength for any kind of move up, right? Then we should get some kind of aggressive B move. Now, if you look at where this started back in November to where we are now in March, it's a good couple of months, right? And this is still the A, right? This is very, very plausible that we're still in the A move. So what makes you think that we go into 300K or 250K or some idiot actually said 1 million, first quarter of this year? I don't think we're going to $1 million in the next month, right? So realistically, just kind of giving you some logic, I guess. This really is what I'm seeing right now, okay? So that's where we are in the big picture. Now let's step down a time frame. Okay, we're going to come into the daily. Now, for a lot of people, the daily probably feels like an eternity. This is, a massive, massive move as a whole. And as I've just said about the M's and W's, what can we see on the daily time frame? you know. So the reality is we are getting some kind of accumulation, right? I don't see this as redistribution, right? Because even if at the best case, we're going to be seeing some kind of B, right? Now, there's lots of logic as why B could be up and around the 50K level, right? And again, I'm not going to go into that. This is more for the subscribers now from kind of this point. But ultimately, there's a lot of reasons for why, right? So all we got to do is manage now the expectations as to where we go first before we go looking and chasing a B move, okay? So that's where I think we are, right now. We've got this kind of accumulation structure potentially forming. We're still in an A on the bigger time frames, right? And all we're looking for now is the shape of the structure inside the schematic, right? So I'm not going to go much, deeper than this right now. I think this is going to be, like I said, more something I'll post for the subscribers in terms of the shorter term from this. But in essence, this is the big picture view. I know I've covered a lot of this over the last couple of months. You can go back to my previous posts, going back as far as March or February, January last year, and you'll actually see, what I've put out there, what we've actually got, where we are, all through the structure, why the levels are in this, and it's all mapped out. Okay, so all you got to do is flick through TradingView. You'll see these particular posts, and then you can follow along in terms of the current roadmap. So I hope this makes sense. Hope you enjoyed. And like I said, the next video is going to be for the subscribers, short-term stuff. So yeah, have a great weekend. Cheers for watching.